Welcome to Let's Get Jacked Up. Here is the disclaimer. This show deals with conspiracy theories, opinions, facts, politics, satire, skits, and/or commercials. We are a Christian-based show, but we talk about lots of things. If we offend you at any point, we do apologize, but this is still America for now. Okay, now you've been warned. Here we go.
This is Let's Get Jacked Up on Fringe Radio Network.
Tim hooked me up with the Let's Get Jacked Up talk.
When Jack left, they brought in Karen, and she's awesome. That was like the greatest thing to ever happen to that show. Now it's just like this monster, awesome show now.
How are you doing?
Hi.
Hey, you got mine on there. I got some phalange in my ear.
Get the reverb. That's not fun. Oh, gosh.
Whoa. You sound like a witch.
Not only is the music awful, but the words are terrible.
Tim is, he kind of runs things. So does that mean that I'm Tim's sidekick?
No, it means all three of us are co-hosts. And by the way, Karen's not here. She's working tonight. So filling in for Karen takes 4 people.
Oh, that's true.
No, Bobby, you're Tim's partner.
I forgot.
Hi.
Hi. Hello, sir. This is Bobby from Let's Get Jacked.
You want me to just give you your intro then?
Yeah. Is that how his song goes, honey?
Yes, it goes.
Coming to you live somewhere deep in Fresno, California, it's Let's Get Jacked Up. Sinners saved by grace. Here are your hosts, Tim, Bobby, and Karen.
Let's get jacked.
Dun, 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 dun.
And I'm the only one with nothing. What's happening?
Laugh track.
Oh my God.
Wow,
That was intense.
that was intense, man. Wow. Hello, everybody, and welcome
hey.
to a very special Let's Get Jacked Up.
Let's get jacked up.
Jacked up on coffee.
Let's everybody read our
our
mugs. What do you think? All right, Karen, you go first.
Oh.
Ladies first.
Avila Valley Barn.
That's what you chose.
Okay, Tim, what does yours say?
I was drinking coffee before you got here. Sorry.
Okay.
Didn't know I needed a statement piece.
Yes.
Blah, blah, blah.
I am pretty sure my death will be
Caused?
Yes, caused by making a sarcastic comment at the wrong time.
Wow, the fact that it took you so long to read that.
It's got coffee on it.
Fun. Mine says, when this cup is empty, it will be time to poop. It's my favorite mug.
I guess. Wow.
Because it's true.
Well, folks, we are videotaping this tonight, but
Kind of.
We're testing it out. But for those of you who are just on the audio, on the podcast, on the FringeRadioNetwork.com, thank you for joining us. And we have a special treat tonight. It's called Testify, Testimony.
Testify.
And we are our very
Testimony.
our very own Karen.
Yes, we do.
Raymond.
Ramon.
Are we doing that now, or are we going to take a break?
We're going to do it later.
Okay.
Like,
Cool,
in a couple days, but we just...
Oh,
Where's your cup, Tim?
I just need more coffee.
Where's your cup, Tim?
That was sarcastic.
Yeah.
I am pretty sure my death will be caused by making a sarcastic comment at the wrong time. Was that the wrong time?
Apparently it was.
Not for him. He's never wrong.
Well, you're still alive, so
She's guilty of it too. Okay, fine. We'll take a break so you can get a top off on your coffee.
Yeah, I want to top off, but I also have to put the girls to bed.
Okay. Oh yeah,
Usually
so
this is about the time that we take a break.
All right, we'll take a break.
Yeah.
And then
We'll
when
take
we
a
come
break.
back-
We'll be back right here on Fringe Radio Network.
You got that right. 5 minutes later.
And we're back.
Yes. Go ahead, Bobby.
And we're back to Let's Get Jacked Up here on the Fringe Radio Network.
Now, it sounds like you're saying fringe.
The Fringe?
It's fringe.
Like
yeah.
Friends?
The
like,
Fringe?
Yeah.
I am saying Fringe.
Like Monica and
Is it?
Chandler?
Some people say Fringe. I can't say. Is it Fringe?
Fringe, yeah.
Yeah, but I've always called it Fringe.
With an E?
Yeah,
It's like
what it sounds
an
you're
like an
saying.
E sound. Yeah, Fringe.
Fringe.
Fringe. Fringe. Fringe sounds weird to me. I've always
the
called it the
fridge.
Fringe.
What do you
Fringe.
call the refrigerator?
Fridge.
Well, there you go. Say that. Say fringe.
Fringe.
I know this is riveting, but
Wow.
But I don't know. I've never noticed that I say it wrong.
Interesting.
I'm not going to
I'm
change.
not saying it's wrong. It's just
I'm
No,
not
you
saying
are.
It's wrong.
You're saying
it's
it's
just
wrong.
not right.
it's just not right.
It's not the way.
I hate both of you. Okay, let's continue
Yeah.
on the Fringe Radio Network. On the Fringe Radio Network.
Well, anyway, as we're back, we are talking now to Karen Raymond. Karen, good evening. And yes, I've known you since I was 15.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do.
moved here
I do recall. Yes, you lived around the block from
around
me.
the bend.
Yeah.
And so we kind of grew up together as far as teenagers.
Just around the river bend.
But then there was a span of time where I didn't see you for a few years. I don't know what happened to us, but
and then some bloke came along.
and then some guy like this, he came along and brought us all back together.
I don't think I did that.
Well, something happened.
Yes.
So
There was probably about a span of 2 or 3 years.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was born at a young age. And
Excellent.
so just a little bit about me. I was born into a Catholic family. We were Christmas and Easter Catholics. I never did First Communion or anything like that. I was baptized when I was a newborn. We weren't really active in church or anything like that. And we had just moved into a house. We were living in an apartment for the first 9-10 years of my life, and we had just bought a house, and my parents were just kind of getting their life together and stuff, and it was really exciting for them. And this guy was walking around our neighborhoods and inviting people to church. He was just starting a church down the street from us, and so we decided to go to one of their Wednesday night things that they had. They had an illusionist there, and it was really cool because, it was just kind of talking about the world and how you just kind of play with, you're taking your life in your own hands by following the world and whatnot. But that night I was 12. That night my mom and I both went and we both got saved that night. I think that I didn't really know exactly what it was that I was getting myself into, but
I think at 12, it's kind of hard to
I think
know.
I had a rough idea of what it meant, but I think also it was the idea of well, people are going forward. I'm going to go forward. My mom's crying, and so I'm going to go forward with her, and, and stuff. So over the years, I definitely was able to get a better understanding of what salvation was. And so I had a little bit more assurance of my salvation. And so that was when I was 12, and I grew up even just from then in the church, and doesn't mean I was a good kid. But I definitely felt like I was living 2 lives, the church life and then my real life. And there were a lot of things that were going on in my life. And so I made it through high school, did a lot of theater, love theater, musical theater, all kinds of theater. But I decided that I wanted to go to the Word of Life Bible Institute after high school because a lot of my friends were going. And so I had wanted to go for a few reasons. One, it was in New York, and being a theater person, New York to me was like, the theater capital of it all. And so I decided.
So that was your real reason.
Yeah, I kind of thought, okay, well, if I can just make it there,
I can make it
then
anywhere.
I can just kind of, get lost and, whatever. And So leading up to me going to the Bible Institute, I was just living in sin. I just didn't even care. And it got to the point where about a week before I was set to take off, like flights were booked, tuition was paid, things like that. And the Bible Institute, it's a 1-year program where you just get a certificate in Bible. And it's really cool because everything is Bible. They have different ministries. They have different, but again, it's just this 1-year program. Yeah. Like Ken Ham was a teacher for a week and a half. So I remember that was like
Alistair Begg too, I think.
That one I don't remember, but we had a lot of different teachers out there. But I was looking forward to it in a way, but I was also just so lost in my sin at the time. And so about a week before I was set to fly out, my parents, my mom especially, because my mom is one of the most holiest people I've ever met in my life.
She's a prayer warrior.
She is. She's
I would love to have
amazing.
her on the show one week.
I know. I don't know if she would, but she'd probably set us all straight, and we'd end up going, okay, and signing off for the last time. Let's get jacked up.
Good night.
But I can remember her pulling me aside at home one night, and it was, I'm smoking, drinking, all these things. I'm 18, and she says, you know what? I don't care if flights have been booked and tuition has been paid. You're not going to Bible college. She's like, why do you even want to go? Like, your life is not in a place where you should be going to Bible school. Like, we've decided that it's just not worth it. Like, if you're going to continue this way, where you've pretty much turned your back on God, like, why would you even want to go? And I was angry, and I was just like, because it was more the idea of like, I wasn't going to get to go to New York, not I wasn't going to get to go to the Bible Institute. And so that night I can remember, taking off in my car, and I was like, F this and, whatever. And I left, and I was crying, and I was smoking, and I was crying. I remember driving, and I just remember probably that being one of the lowest times of my life. And I really did want to end it. I was just like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't know. I can't do this. Like, I can't. It was a really frustrating time. And there's this one street. I don't know if I've ever told you this story. If you guys all know where Golden State is here in Fresno, where it's like that straightaway between Ashland and Shaw. Well, I was doing about 85 down Golden State, and there was a semi coming, and I was like, this is it. This is my chance. Like, I'm just going to wreck my car into the semi, and I'll be done. And like, maybe I'll snap out of it or whatever. And I can remember driving. I can remember going so fast and thinking like this is adrenaline's pumping. And I can just remember hearing the cliche, still small voice say, are you really ready to meet me? And that was that. That was, I just like pulled over to the side of the road. I just start crying, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like God just got a hold of my heart that night, because he was just like, you are going nowhere fast, and you are mine, and I'm not going to allow that anymore. So I came home, and I'm crying, and I'm just like, and so my mom and I, we prayed together, and I was like, okay, I am ready. This is the opportunity that I need to kind of start my life over, because again, I had gotten into so much stuff, and I'll never forget, because I to give you a rough idea, I had about 12 piercings at the time when I was going, and I'll never forget having to tell my mom, I need you to help me get some of my piercings out. And she was like, I'm sorry. And so yeah, she didn't know. Yeah, she'll tell the story of what happened when so she had no idea about some of them, but so I ended up going to Bible school, and it was awesome. It was this mountaintop experience, but eventually you have to come back to the valley, literally, So it was an awesome experience, a 1-year program, and I learned so much and got to know some amazing people. But unfortunately, it was short-lived in that once I came home, it was really where the rubber meets the road, where it's just like, okay, which way are you going to go? And I was able to hold out for about 2 or 3 months, and doing well and staying away from friends and things that I knew were going to get me in trouble. And eventually all that just kind of creeped back in. And I've always had a problem, and no one wants to hear this, but men have always been my weakness. Sex and sexual sin and stuff like that has always been my weakness because I always wanted to be loved. Like I always thought, if I let him do this, he'll like me, or if I let him do this, he'll love me, or whatever. Like I was always just looking for that one guy that was going to say, like, it's you. I want you. Maybe I've just seen too many sappy movies, but that
makes sense.
So it was always, which is weird too, because I have a really good relationship with my dad. Like it's not like I have daddy issues or anything. I grew up and he was an alcoholic, but luckily he did get saved when I was about 14. But we've always had a really good relationship. So I'm really not sure where it comes from. Probably the insecurity of like being overweight most of my life and being the funny girl, but not the pretty girl type of thing,
That's a matter of opinion.
Yes, now it is. But when you're 12 and, 12 and you're way 200 pounds, like it's a little different. But so I was always looking for love, and never really found it until I met you. And so you were my
shining armor, right? Knight in the shining armor.
Knight in shining armor. But it was funny because you were so different. Mm-hmm. You were so different, and it was really hard for me because I married a virgin. Let's just put it that way.
Well, and that's that one thing that was interesting for you, though, is that because I was very naive when it came to women in general, right? I had made a decision not to be have a sexual pursuit of women. And so when she came along, I was very into her, and maybe she'll tell the story of how we met. But
before
I know, but it all ties in. But it's funny because she went on business as usual after she met me, and later on down the road, that became an issue for me because I'm the type where it's like, okay, if I go on a date with somebody, that means
we're exclusive.
Like I'm making my time. I'm putting myself out there for you.
You didn't know the rules.
I don't. Yeah. Apparently, I only started dating in the 50s.
I'll give a little background on that. At the time, I was seeing a girl. I was kind of dating a girl at the time, which is his cousin, and she had a party, and I showed up at like 10 o'clock at night, and the party started at like 6, and I was just, going to make an appearance and hang out with her and stuff, and Bob was there, super drunk. He was, not me. I had just gotten there, but him and his cousin, super drunk. And I was sitting at the party, don't know anyone except for the hostess. And she's, trying to make the rounds and stuff. So I'm sitting at the party, and there's this little makeshift dance floor that they have there. And there's maybe like a handful of people on the dance floor and stuff. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, if this is stupid, I have to work in the morning. I'm just going to leave. I'll give it maybe like half an hour and I'll leave. And so I'm just kind of sitting there looking around, and all of a sudden, it was just like the movies. The dance floor, the 4 people on the dance floor part, and the light shines on this guy, and he's got spiky hair and a goatee, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
And my tight black T-shirt.
Yes, and your Bobby. I was like, oh my gosh, that guy's really cute. And then he smiled, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then he's like walking towards me because I'm on the other side of the dance floor, and I'm like, he's walking this way. And I'm like, I think I'm making eye contact with him. And he's smiling. And I'm just like, trying to play it cool and stuff. And then he walks right past me and sits on, this is where Tim, sits on his aunt's lap, who was sitting right behind me. So this whole time he's like smiling, and he had no idea I was there. And I was like, well, F this. I was like, this is stupid. I don't even want to be here. Yeah. And so later on, maybe about a half an hour later, I was getting ready to go. And so his cousin, which is this girl's brother, is kind of hitting on me, and he's super drunk, and he's just saying,
is he more drunk than Bobby at this time?
I'd sobered up.
Yeah, That's what he says. But all night I had been teasing him like, no, you're really because the cousin was just like,
Girl, your eyes are so beautiful.
yeah, stupid lines
Girl,
like
your
that.
lips are so beautiful.
And I was like, and you're so drunk. And I can remember because Bob was just like, he's like, well, to be honest though, like you really do have great eyes. And I remember that's all he said. And I was like, and you're really drunk too. And I remember you saying, no, he's like, no, I'm not that bad, And so anyway, we ended up talking until about 2 or 3 in the morning. And so it was interesting. We found out a lot of fun facts, even just that night, of how we were in the same place at the same time for a lot of different things. And so that night we met, we exchanged numbers, even though I almost left without his number. And so he just didn't know how to
I don't know social cues and stuff.
Yeah.
And so she's getting ready to leave, and I'm like, "Oh, it's really great.
Well, it's really
that's
nice
really good
talking to you."
Yeah, I was like, "It was really cool to meet you. I hope to meet you again. See you again sometime." And then she's like, "Okay, bye." And I'm like, "All right, see you later." And she walks to her car, and my buddy was just like, "Dude, you got to get her number." I was like, if she wanted me to have it, she would have given it to me. Like, that's my logic, right? And he's like, "Dude, that's not how it works." So he runs over.
And I just hear him yelling from across we're down a little bit down the street, and he's like, Karen, Bobby wants your number.
Oh my.
And then she's like, if he wants it, he could come get it.
That's exactly what I said. I was
I
like,
did the walk of shame. I walked over and I was just like, and we had cell phones that didn't have color screens yet.
Yeah, it was like, if you wanted to text, you had to click the...
No, I didn't have a flip phone. I had a
the Nokia.
I had the Nokia.
Or no, it was a Motorola. I had a Nokia.
Oh, okay, yeah. And then I had a Siemens for a little bit. But anyway, so she's like, I was like, hi, can I get your number? And so I got the number. I put it in my phone. Or no, I think I wrote it down. I can't remember what it was.
This is ancient times.
I know.
Yeah, dude, this is
Mind you,
2001.
this was 20 years ago.
2001, yeah.
But so he called and we went on a date. We went to go see Dr. Dolittle.
Yeah.
And
because nothing else was open. It was very last minute. It sat in the very front row.
I had a pretty busy schedule. I was
in the
working
front
full-time.
row?
Yeah, we had to sit in the front row.
Oh, was it packed?
It was packed.
Oh, okay. I was hoping that's not what you chose.
Yeah, no.
Hey, that's got a romantic area.
I love to look like I love to watch movies where it's as if I'm up their nose, sitting on their lap the whole time. Yeah. So then we went on the one date
and went to go see a movie, and then wanted to talk a little bit, so we ended up at Denny's until like 3 a.m. And he kissed me, and and so, and again, coming from the past that I had and not really knowing a whole lot about him, I anticipated, let's go back to my place type of thing, and nothing happened. Like none of that happened, and I was like, oh, okay, well, And then so he would kind of call me, or I would call him, and like I went to his work one time, and the thing of it is that because after that first date, there was no like
heat.
Well, no, there was heat, but there was no follow through. With the heat,
because I did,
because he's a gentleman.
Yes,
and and I wasn't used to that. Yeah, and I wasn't used to that because I figured
a lot. And he respected you, so he didn't want to mess it up.
Well, but that was the thing in my head. It was if he liked me, he would have told me to go to his house.
Why are you breaking stuff?
I know. Sorry.
Sorry about that.
But if he liked me, he would have told me to go home with him or, whatever it was. And so I thought, okay,
Let me show you my apartment.
This guy's just some guy. And like, I don't, whatever. So I was still talking to like 2 other guys at the time. And this is the part that he was referring to is that one night I went and visited him at work on my way to hang out with some other guy. And
unbeknownst to me.
Yeah.
And the thing that I always tell her is that little things, like if I had known that, this would have never happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that would have crushed me when at a 20-year-old guy who's only had a handful of girlfriends, because every girl that I've ever dated was only because it was a serious thing, and every girlfriend that I've ever had except for one cheated on me because I wouldn't give up the goose.
Yes.
So it's just like all of these things where it's like, but God has a plan. God purposely made sure that I did not know that, because long term we needed each other in order to find him again.
You definitely make a good match, for sure.
So, probably our third or fourth date.
Yeah.
I can remember this. There's two things that happened on this date that I remember.
Is this at Bennigan's?
Yes. So, he, in all of this, we were having a conversation and he was just like, I think you're really cool. He's like, I just, never in a million years would I have seen myself with a girl like you. And I was like, what do you mean like me? And he's like, well, I don't know. You're just like out there. You're like a party girl. And you're
so wild.
You're so wild. You've been with a lot of people and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, well, and he didn't realize that what he was saying could potentially hurt my feelings. Oh, okay.
How did you take that?
A girl like me, I took a lot of offense to it because a lot of it was because he didn't realize that, that would be offensive. And so in the same night, so that was at the beginning of dinner. At the end of dinner, the waitress brings the check, and he's sitting there, and he's got this dollar bill that he's working on, and he's folding it into a heart. Okay. And the waitress had flirted with him a little bit, in my opinion, which he had no idea. And so he's making this little paper heart out of the dollar bill. And I'm like, oh, he's making me a little heart, or whatever. Leaves it for the waitress.
Oh, no.
A heart-shaped dollar bill for the waitress.
I just learned how to make it. I like origami stuff on the side. So I was just making it. It was the girl's tip anyway. So I was like, we're talking. I'm keeping my fingers busy, like an ADHD thing or whatever. And I leave it on. Well, here's the best part. I forgot my card in the restaurant, which Karen thinks the girl held on to it until we left or something. So she comes running out. She's like, sir, you left this.
Yeah.
And Karen is like, anyway. Oh, I am so done.
So that was kind of the deciding factor for me. Well, actually, and again, I say it because it really did put a lot of things into perspective, because I really do feel like God was using him to speak to me in that, again, that idea of what's it going to be? Are you going to continue this way and lose out on what I'm offering you right now? Or are you going to decide that he is enough? That just I am enough. And so, that was when I knew that we were going to be together. And so fast forward 2 years, we get married, and definitely some bumpy roads along the way. But one thing that was big for us is that I had gone to church kind of sporadically throughout our marriage, and he had gotten saved 2 years after we got married. A year?
It was before we were married.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So he had gotten saved before we were married, which was kind of a thing for me because I had my best friend, super Christian at the time. Now, okay, whatever. Mm-hmm. She point blank told me, you can't marry him. He's not a Christian. And again, being at where I was like, well, what does that matter? But the Bible does tell us we're not to be unequally yoked and stuff. And so I did stew with that for a long time, but the Lord, worked in his power. And he did end up getting saved about a year and a half into our relationship. And so we got married, and we bought a house a year after we were married, and we both had really good paying jobs, and we got ourselves into a lot of debt, and we did, what you normally do when you're, first.
We were dinks, dual income, no kids.
And
fast forward to 10 years into our marriage.
So
7 years, I guess.
So all of this, trust me, there's a point. I promise. So we're coming full circle. So one thing, and looking back at it, this is kind of what I realized, is that we didn't need God because we had money. Our God was money. And so we would go to church just to kind of hang out with my parents, or see friends, or we were making over $100,000 a year, and we wouldn't tithe, and we just, all of these things. And we just felt our security was in the fact that we had good paying jobs. We didn't have kids. We could get up and go. We could, we were living our best life. And, a few things happened. The first thing that happened, first of all, rewind a few years. Before we got married, he actually told me there was a moment when he was like, I can't marry you because you don't want kids. And I was just like, my sister was a single mom. I had seen everything that she had went through. And that was one of my biggest fears, was that I was going to end up, first of all, didn't want kids, but second of all, end up having kids with a guy who was going to leave me, So I was just like, I can't change that. Like, I can't tell you that I'm going to want kids. And he was like, then I can't marry you. And that we kind of stewed on that for a long time. And finally I was like, look, I will consider having kids, but I have to really be ready. Like,
I wanted honeymoon babies. So I wanted her pregnant and barefoot, right after we got married. And
I was like, I don't even know, because we didn't live together before we got married or any of that. And so,
first night in our apartment was our wedding night.
Yeah. And so I just, I really had to say, I'm not comfortable with the idea of like what I've seen my sister go through. I need to be confident in our relationship before I will give myself to you that way, give you to. And so fast forward about 6 years, and my best friend had a baby, which both of us had said, we're not having kids, blah, blah, blah. Well, she gets pregnant and she has a baby. And so like seeing her have a child and thinking, okay, maybe I can do this, And so, I had been on the shot the whole time we were married, and, we decided to get off the shot. I think it was in November is when I took my last one, and they were like, okay, well, it could take a while. It could take up to a year for you guys to get pregnant. It takes a while to come out of the system. It took us 3 months.
Oh.
And so we I was off of my shot in November, February, Valentine's Day. I found out we were pregnant. Valentine's Day, I find out we're pregnant. 2 days later, he finds out he's losing his job.
Oh.
And so again, this thing that we had always relied on, the thing that we always knew was going to be there.
So you had 2 days of bliss.
Yeah,
Right?
And so we find out he's losing his job, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? Like, oh, you'll just get another job, whatever and stuff. Well, about 2 weeks after that is when we found out we were having twins.
Whoa.
And I was like...
Then she's like, you really need to get
I was like, wait a minute. Like, I didn't want kids, and now I'm having two. Like, how am I going to
one shot?
Yeah, and my husband's going to lose his job, and we're not going to have any money. And like all these things are going through my head. And
so now you're stressing.
Yeah,
big
and
time.
We had been going to church with my parents. They had left the church that I grew up in, and we're starting to go to this other church. And we decided, okay, well, we'll follow my parents there. And the people were really nice. We had gotten in with them, and we'd been going for about a year, I would say. Again,
not regularly, but just occasionally.
Sporadically, maybe like once or twice a month if we were lucky. And so all of these things were happening, but again, we were okay because we had money, we had a little bit put away, all these things. He would find another job. We were going to be okay. And we went to, it was our third ultrasound, I think it was.
Yeah, about 10 weeks.
Yeah.
Was it? 12
13,
weeks?
13.
13. Oh, that's right.
13 weeks. And the doctor is like, I'm really not feeling comfortable with the way things look right now. I'm going to send you to a specialist. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? She's like, well, there's a lot of fluid around one of the babies. The other baby doesn't really have a lot of fluid. Something's not quite right. So I'm going to send you to a specialist. So we go to the specialist. The specialist looks and she says, okay, I've seen this before, but I'm not totally a master at dealing with it. So I'm going to send you to San Francisco. So we're like, okay.
This is all within like 3 days.
Yeah. And so we're like, okay, fine. So we have a timeshare, and there's one of our buildings is in San Francisco. And so we booked the timeshare for 3 days because we're not sure how long we're going to be up there. Maybe we'll just take a little time, to hang out and see the city and stuff. And so we went in on a Monday, and we had the room until Wednesday. And we go in, we see the specialists, and they're like, okay, well, it looks like what you have is twin transfusion syndrome. Basically, the girls are identical. We had one ultrasound. There was one egg, and then we had the second ultrasound, 2 eggs, like the egg had split. And so they shared a placenta, and but had one sac with a little separating membrane, but they shared a placenta. And in the placenta, they shared blood vessels. Certain blood vessels they had shared, and they were misfiring. So Sophia was getting a lot of blood, and Olivia wasn't getting any blood. Well, not any, but a very small amount of blood.
She basically looked like if you were to jump into a a swimming pool with a plastic bag around you. You know, like where it's like sucked up on you.
Yeah.
That's what she looked like.
When you see the ultrasound, you can see that Sophia's got all this fluid around her, but Olivia's like just kind of crouched up in the corner and so they do an ultrasound. They say this is what it looks like. There's 4 different stages. You look like, so first stage is not too bad. Second stage is when they get worried. Third stage is the loss of one twin, and the fourth stage is you lose both of them.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And we were between stage 2 and 3.
Oh my goodness.
And so they said, okay, we're going to take these. We have a panel of like all of our experts. We all meet this afternoon and we go over all the cases we're all looking at, and we'll let you know like how we want to proceed from here. They were like, normally we would do surgery to help correct this, because basically what they can do is they can take a fiber optic laser, and laser the blood vessels that they shared in the placenta. But the doctor
help balance things out.
Help balance. So basically, once they cauterize those, they'll just go off of the ones that are feeding just to them, as opposed to ones that they share. So they said, okay, we're going to send you guys home. We'll give you guys a call probably tomorrow morning, and we'll let you know how we want to proceed. Normally we would do a surgery, but you're so early because we're 14 weeks. They were like, you're so early, we can't guarantee
and they
that.
Typically didn't do the surgery till 20 weeks, right?
16.
Yeah, 16. Okay.
16 was the earliest that they've ever done a surgery. And they said, you're 14 weeks. We just don't know that, we want to send you home and maybe have you come back in 2 weeks just so we can make sure that separating membrane is going to be good. And so we're like, okay. And so we go back to the room. We're like, okay, well, we're here for 2 more days. No problem. We went to the pier. We did this, that, whatever. And I had left my phone in the room. And we get back, and there was a phone call from the fetal treatment center there in San Francisco. And I was like, oh, and I listened to the voicemail. And the doctor says, hey, we have some news. We met with our specialist, and we just want to give you a call and let you know, like, what we'd like to do. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I call them, and they're like, well, we met with all the specialists, and we really feel like we should do the surgery as soon as possible, because chances are you don't have a week.
Ooh.
Chances are you're going to lose at least one in the next week or so.
Oh my.
So we will take our chances with the membrane. We need to make sure that we at least try. And so I was like, okay. They're all, did you head back to Fresno already? Like, could we get you guys here maybe tomorrow or Wednesday at the latest? And I said, we're still here. And they were like, you're still here? I was like, yeah, we booked our timeshare. Like, we're still here. And they're like, can you be here tomorrow morning? And we're like, yeah, sure.
Can I grab some stuff?
Yeah. And so we just, I don't do well with like all of this stuff. And so this was like one of my biggest fears realized, and so I called my mom, and I'm just like crying, and I'm like, Mom, this is going on and stuff. And so they, my mom and dad, they come up to San Francisco the next morning, and my mom comes in. They make it just in time for my mom to pray with me, which really meant a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Because she's a prayer warrior.
She is a prayer warrior, absolutely.
So we go in, we have the surgery. They separated, I think it was like 6 or 8 blood vessels that they were sharing. Wild. If you ever get to see, what was that documentary that I
don't remember.
Surgeon's Cut or something like that. They actually show the procedure that we had done because they do a series, and one of the episodes is on the doctor who invented the surgery that helped us. So they do the surgery. I have a epidural. And so basically epidural makes you numb from your nipples down. Okay. And so
there you go.
That explains it.
Yeah. And so I, first time spinal, yay. So we have the surgery. We come out. The doctor's really confident. He's like, we were able to get all the vessels. The babies look like they're doing well. We'll give you 24 hours here just to make sure, and then you'll rest, and then we'll have you back in a couple of weeks. So it's like, okay. So as my legs start coming around, I'm like, and I look at him and I go, I would know if I pooped myself, right? And the nurse goes, you have a catheter in, like you can't. And I'm like, my legs feel wet. Like I feel like I just damp. I go, I don't know if I peed myself or I pooped. I don't know. I've been numb and stuff. Well, they pull back the sheet, and there's this puddle of fluid.
Of yellow fluid.
Oh, my.
And the crazy thing is I'm watching from my end, right? And I see the nurse, and so she grabs Karen's catheter that's literally inside her urethra and goes tug, tug.
Ah, come on.
And it's like, that's secure. So nothing's leaking out of there.
You go like, ow.
But they removed it and put a new one in just to be careful, just to be safe, right? And Karen's like, no, that does not feel good.
The last time you did that, I was numb. This time it's not.
So then they do some more, and they look, and they're like, this feels kind of oily. Like, it doesn't feel like urine. Like, something about it's not right. So they immediately call who is it, the person who does the sonogram, whatever it is.
Yeah,
Ultrasound. They do an ultrasound, and all of the amniotic fluid is gone. Both babies now look sucked up.
No.
So what happened is the surgery, they stitched everything up, but something happened, maybe when they transferred her or whatever, but one of the stitches popped or something, and all of the fluid came out the incision. If the fluid had come out of the vaginal canal, then the girls would have been dead, because that would have said that the little cork was what I called it, would have popped.
Mucus plug.
Yeah. So anyways, all of that to say, we had all these traumatic things happen, and this is just in a span of
not even a week, is it?
Well, it's like 2 weeks total. 2 weeks total.
It was a week when we got the news, and then we were in San Francisco less than a week later.
So we, in a span of 6 weeks, we went to San Francisco 8 times. Yeah.
So basically, at that point, the doctor comes in and they say, "Okay, it looks like the incision, one of the stitches on the incision, failed." And you leaked it. It wasn't all of the amniotic fluid,
it was
but
a good amount.
I think there was about 15% left. There was so little amount left that when they did the ultrasound, it was really hard to see the babies because there wasn't enough fluid there to kind of get a good picture. So the doctor comes in and he's just like, he says, you have to be really careful. It's like these next 24 hours is going to decide whether they make it or not. You have to know that your uterus is one of the biggest muscles that you have in your body. So if you get an infection from the surgery, we will have to abort because it's such a big muscle that it will kill you. It'll kill you. It'll kill your babies and it will kill you. So this is what we're dealing with. It's really just, there's nothing we can do. And what was funny is that up to this point, I had put all my faith in these doctors who had told me that we're going to do the best that we can. We're going to, the surgery was successful and everything. And my mom made it in time and all of these things, everything was going well. It was exactly how it was supposed to happen. And then this happened. And I really feel like it was God saying, who do you have faith in? Do you have faith in these doctors or do you have faith in me? Do you have faith in and up to that point, we had been depending on ourselves because everything was still in our control. Even though he lost his job, I still had health insurance through my work. Everything was going to be fine.
I still had health insurance too. So she was actually doubled insured through the term of the pregnancy.
Yeah, so and that comes later.
That comes later.
But so I was just like, it was all so much. My parents were still there because they had decided to stay until we were going to come home. And my mom to this day tells this story, but we hadn't told anyone what we were having because we had found out that we were having girls, that they were both girls, and no one knew what we were having. And we had chosen names, and it was really hard for me because I was just like, I can't, we have names, we can't lose them and stuff. And so my mom was just sitting there and I was like, they're girls. I was like, they're 2 little girls, Sophia Marie and Olivia Grace. And my mom just starts crying and
we didn't have a middle name for Olivia yet.
Yeah. And so I said Sophia and Olivia, and my mom tells me even to this day, she's like, at that point, she's like, I knew. She's like, I felt it. You released them to God. You gave them to God and said, they're yours. And so we went home. And it was one of those things where we had no idea.
Yeah.
Because at that size, they're too small to feel movement or anything like that. So we had no idea. We were reading online, like, what can we do to, build fluid and stuff like that? Because the biggest part was not just that the incision needed to heal, but that the fluid needed to refill. And so amniotic fluid is made up of urine, basically. So the baby's pee, and that's what makes fluid. And so we went home, and it was just a waiting game. So, and I know we got to go to a break, so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll come we're going to come back to hear the rest of the story. So just so you know, obviously, things turn out okay.
Yes. They're 10 now, just like.
But we'll be right back, and we'll hear the rest of Karen's testimony about how God is great.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
A few moments later.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yeah, welcome back to Let's Get Jacked Up.
Let's get jacked up.
We are here with Karen Raymond. She's telling her awesome testimony. And I was just telling you during the break, Karen, before we get back to jumping into where we left off, just thinking about when you were saying about the eggs and how they were, the position they were in and everything, and knowing their names and knowing what they look like now, it's really a miracle. I mean, these tiny eggs.
Well, think about it. It was one egg that split.
Yeah. And those were two individuals.
Yeah.
I mean, simply amazing. The God is amazing. So
yeah, it's wild too, because we waited 6 years to have kids because, again, I just wasn't ready. Yeah. And so we always say that God wanted to make up for lost time. But this will come in on my testimony a little bit later. But so we left off after I had just had surgery, and they told us basically that it's the next week is either going to make us or break us. Either we're going to continue to rebuild fluid and the babies are going to be okay, or we are going to lose both of them. And there's really just no in between. And so we waited about a week and went back up to San Francisco. In that week, the fluid had the part that was punctured had healed and sealed. The fluid had rebuilt, not entirely, but enough to where they were feeling comfortable with the way that it was going.
And both girls were getting the same amount.
Yeah, heart rates were good. Bladders looked good because, again, the bladder was what they were worried about with Olivia, because Olivia was our shrunken twin. And so they were worried about the bladder not developing, and that's oftentimes why there's no fluid, is because, but everything looked good even after the first week, and they said, okay, come back in a week. So like he said, about 8 times in 6 weeks, we were up in San Francisco, to the point where it's like, we would be able to time it and, think, oh, okay. And so got to see a lot of fun stuff up there. But, so probably about.
No, I'm sorry. Before you move on, all this time you were still off work, or
I was actually looking for work.
Looking for work.
Yeah.
Well, and what's funny is, again, hindsight's always 20/20, because we thought it was the worst thing in the world that he had lost his job, when really it was God saying, he's not going to be able to work anyway, because you're going to be in the hospital
and
a lot.
And I had collected a severance package. So
I was wondering how this. Okay,
yeah.
So there was a combination of
we had a good chunk that we were
then
able to set aside just in case.
Did you get to be on unemployment?
I collected unemployment for a little while we were trying to, in between.
So
all
God
that stuff.
had this. God had this situated.
Yeah. But again, like it's scary.
Oh, sure,
it's
absolutely.
Totally scary at the time, because you don't know. And so this is really, I was telling Tim on the break, this is really the biggest part of my testimony, because it's like, when I look back at what my life was, even before meeting him, it's like not my proudest moments, and even before getting pregnant with the girls, like it was just a love of self and a love of things and a love of all of these things. And it was just, this whole situation was God getting my attention. And I can see, looking back at it, and even during it, I realized like how big God was, who God was, this God that I had put my faith in quote unquote faith, but never really held on to him for dear life. You are all I have left. You are, and it's unfortunate that it takes things like this for us to get to that point.
Look at Jonah. Right?
Yeah. Well, and when did you come to the realization of why God gave you twins?
Well, not until after they were born.
Oh, okay.
But,
we'll get there.
And we'll get there.
Yeah.
So on one of our second to last trips up to San Francisco, everything had been positive. They had mentioned the membrane.
We're at about 22 weeks at this point, weren't we?
20.
20 weeks. Okay.
20. They had mentioned the membrane in between them. So basically, they were sharing a placenta. So think of the way that I think of it is like a water balloon, that's what the sac looks like. And the top is the little knot, where you tie it off. That's the placenta, So they were sharing the placenta. They're in the water balloon and there's this little piece of skin basically that's separating them from their sides. Well, when they did the surgery, they had to go through that piece of skin. And that was what they had talked about early on that, it's so early. We're afraid of that little piece of skin right there not recovering. Well, it didn't. It completely shredded. Wow. So,
well, but what happened was that it's so the body is an amazing thing. So at about week 20, 18 to 20 weeks, this little separating membrane on twins, it actually gets thicker. It hardens. And it hardens to anticipate the babies getting bigger and moving. So they don't, hurt each other.
Right.
What happened though was it solidified, it hardened before all of the amniotic fluid had filled, right? So as the babies grew, this membrane was still there and it was already at capacity because it had hardened prematurely, right? Or, according to the growth of the amniotic fluid.
Sure.
So it's like this, it's growing. It already had that small little puncture thing in it. So all it took was just enough pressure and it just tore. Yeah.
Wow.
So that was their fear, was that membrane wasn't going to hold up, and it happened. And the reason for that is once they're instead of them having their own spaces, they're sharing one big space and they would kind of roll over each other. And so the fear was entangling of the cords. And so, in San Francisco, they had told us at about 20 weeks, they said, we can see that you've got blood flow through both of the cords. Babies are still doing good. Usually at this point, we want you to come in for hospital monitoring. Basically, you're on hospital bed rest, being monitored 24 hours a day.
How many weeks was this now?
This was at 20 weeks. And they said, we would like for you to be up here in San Francisco because, we've done this since the beginning. And we're just like, no, I do not want to be up here because I'm 20, I think it's 21 weeks or so. And they said, okay, well, we'll have you up one more time. We'll keep an eye on the cords. We'll see how it goes. So basically at 24 weeks, they had decided, okay, you need to, we strongly suggest you going on hospital bed rest because if they showed us a picture of the cords, it looked like a ball of yarn.
Oh my goodness.
They were just like, it's crazy. We'll show you the picture later, but like they're so tangled. I have it on my Facebook.
Oh, okay.
They're so tangled up that it just looks like, it reminds me kind of like sausages, like when sausages get links, links, kind of get all tied up. And so they said, there's a pretty good size knot in there, and at this point, if one of them rolls over on the knot, it'll clamp off the blood that flows to them, and they'll die. Basically, like they will suffocate because that's how they get their, everything, all their nutrients, all their stuff like that. And so we had a really quick impromptu baby shower, and at 26 weeks,
right after 4th of July.
Right after 4th of July, 26 weeks, I went into the hospital and was in the hospital for 72 days on hospital bed rest. Basically in a bed 23 and a half hours out of the day. For the first week, I was able to shower, and that was it. And my husband was on a hide-a-bed, pull-out bed for 70.
It was a recliner
71
chair.
of those days.
Yeah. I only missed one day, and that was because we
had work done on the yard.
Yeah.
We had cement put in.
That's right.
And so he needed to be there. And we had dogs, and we had all this stuff, and
so it was such a cool thing. I was able to me being out of work, right? So I'm completely out of work. I had a job interview, and I said, I just want you to know I have a pregnant wife. She is in, it's a high-risk pregnancy. There will be a time when I have to, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, thanks, we'll consider you. I doubt they did. Obviously, they didn't because I didn't get the job. But, again, God has such an amazing plan because I was able to spend every single day with my wife.
And
every
I bet
day.
you guys got closer with that.
We got so close. And
well, what's funny about that is that God has impeccable timing because, again, he wanted a honeymoon baby. If this had happened the first year we were married,
we would not have survived.
We wouldn't have survived. No. Because you're still getting to know your spouse. You're still, we had been married for 6 years, going on 7 at this point. We knew each other. We knew all the stupid idiosyncrasies that the other one did. And we had come to terms with those things, because being in the hospital and going through all the series of emotions, and me basically telling the nurses, please just get me out of this bed. It was an emotional roller coaster where it's just there would be days where I would just be like, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't,
So, that's why it was a blessing because she is, she doesn't do well on her own. Right. She doesn't do well on her own. So I was able to be there every day. I set up the laptop so we were able to watch movies directly from my computer.
We were in there for so long that the nurses let us sneak our dogs in to see. He brought each dog at least one time to come see me. And they were in there for about, half an hour, 45 minutes. And those were our kids before we had kids, And so, we really got to know the staff and they were amazing.
I was able to get into the nurse's snack station so I can just
they just gave him the code for the door and stuff. We were just, 72 days, 3 months basically. And the whole thing coming back to it is that, so what they were doing is I would have a monitor here and a monitor here, one on Sophia, one on Olivia, and then one monitoring for contraction. So I was hooked up to a machine.
On your belly.
On my belly the whole time, all day, every day. And the doctors would come in every morning and every evening just to kind of check on me, read the stats, everything that had happened. What they were looking for was decelerations in the girls' heart rates. And that would say that there was a problem. Right. And they did warn us. They said, if there's a decel, if that decel lasts a certain amount of time, we will rush you down and do an emergency C-section because that means one of the babies is in trouble. In 72 days, we had one decel, and I'll never forget it because he had just left to go feed the dogs, and I'm watching the monitor because we could hear it, and all of a sudden I'm like. And I'm watching as the heart rate just kind of goes down. And
you're not moving. You're just laying in the bed,
No, I'm just
right?
laying there. And I'm just watching. And I'm like... And I call him. I'm like, it's going down. You better come back up. And he's like, well, yeah, I'm downstairs. I'm just barely getting to the car. And the nurses come in. And we watch it. And it was literally for maybe less than a minute, 45 seconds. But it was scary because this is the moment we're waiting for, And so it got to the point where we had made it to 36 weeks. And I am begging them to just deliver the babies. I'm just please.
Do you feel like you're in prison at this point?
Oh my gosh, yes.
We originally she was supposed to have a PICC line in her neck. She was supposed to have an IV.
I was supposed to be on an IV. And for the first week, I was on an IV.
And it was horrible. And they have to change it every 3 days.
They have to change it every 3 days. And the thing is
on your neck?
No, in my hand, all the veins on my hands. And the thing, he knows this about me. I'm really weird about veins. Yeah. I hate having my veins touched and or having the blood drawn.
So the reason why they were going to give her the PICC line was because her veins were restricted. She was getting so nervous that her veins were constricting.
So they would collapse.
So
when they tried
PICC
to do
line, they go straight through the vein in your neck, and it goes straight to the heart. So it's an immediate thing.
Yeah.
So we pleaded with the doctor, and the doctor says, you know what? We'll give you an IV if we feel like you need it. Because she wasn't in pain, there was no need for any medicine to be taken.
So the whole thing with the IVs was that they wanted to be able to administer anesthesia if I needed it. If we needed to go for an emergency C-section, they wanted to have that immediate access.
Sure.
They didn't want to have to worry about getting, lines in or stuff like that because in the moment, and that's really how dire our situation was, is that it
moment
couldn't
by moment.
go. Yeah, it was literally moment by moment.
So, but before you go any further, we have to talk about the water bill.
Yeah. Okay.
This is a real testimony.
This is
so I have been going to the house every single day, feeding the dogs, and that's it. Everything in the house was shut off. There's no reason for us to have the lights on, the water running, any of that stuff. So we still paid the bills, but it was something like, 1 month we paid, I think, $85, which is cheap for us because we have a pool.
Right? Yeah.
So all of a sudden I get a bill from the water company, and it's like $740, right?
$832.
$832. So it's $832.
It just so happens that you know that.
She knows that, yeah. I always thought it was $732, but it was so $832, right?
Wow.
And I call up and I'm like, hi, I've got a question about my water bill. And they're like, wow, you're actually using more water than the 7-Eleven and the McDonald's combined. And that's right down the street from us, right? And we're like, what? So I'm like, how is this even possible?
Been home.
Like, I don't have a flood going out the street, whatever, right? Turns out we had a water softener on the house, and it broke, and it got stuck in the open position. Well, the overflow went straight into the gutter, went straight into the drain for the washing machine.
Oh.
So it was literally just like having the hose on. It was just had the hose on and just letting it run straight through.
Just pouring money down the drain.
Yeah, and that was for an entire month, right? And so,
and mind you, he's on unemployment.
I'm on unemployment.
I'm in the hospital.
Yeah. And I'm like, what are we going to do, right? And so we're freaking out. We're like, this is ridiculous, do
you explain this to, or once they figured it out?
Yeah, we explain, but it doesn't matter. The bill is still the bill. Whether we used it or not, it was still consumed by my address, so I'm on the hook for it, right? So we're like, okay, well, we can come up with the payment plan. So that's what we did. We basically came up with a payment plan. I'm on the phone with them trying to hash it all out, and it was the same day that I made that call, I think, wasn't it? Within a couple of days. I happen to come here to the house to check the mail, and I see that we have something from the mortgage. I'm like, something else, right? So I don't even open it. I just bring it to Karen. And I was like, hey.
Stress her out a little more.
Well, no, because I was just like, maybe you can understand, here, this is from
this is
whatever.
From the mortgage.
And so we open it up, and it was a check. It was an overpayment from our escrow account.
But this was like months
after.
Like this was
so the check
3
issued.
months in the
The
making.
check issued was after the bill had been so our escrow. You know how an escrow account works.
Yes.
It's there to pay your taxes, right? Taxes were paid in April, and we get this check at the end of August.
No, I think it was June.
Was it that early? I thought it was later than
June
that.
or July because it was hot.
Oh, okay, yeah. So anyway, we get this bill. Obviously, it's well after when the escrow account had done its job and was paying us the difference. So we give it to her, opens it up. It's a check, and the check is for $840.
Come on now, Lord, you got this. Huh?
I mean, no joke, right? I mean, it literally zeroed out our water bill.
That was and again, things like that would just happen.
And that was, that right there was our answer to prayer, because we were like, what are we going to do?
For you, that was your.
It really was.
That's when God spoke to him.
Yeah.
For me, it was with the babies. For him, it was with the water bill, where it's just that's when God just really got our attention. Hey, you're gonna go through a lot of stuff, but I'm here.
Well,
I'm watching.
I was always the one who we both made good money, but I always made more money. So I went from being the breadwinner, to nothing. Right, and that was,
and I bet that bothered you.
That's a strike on the pride, of course, And so, I struggled with that. I mean, I was looking for work. I was going all over the place trying to find stuff, putting resumes, and nothing.
But I
would
kept
hit.
telling him, I was like, now is not the time.
Yeah,
now is not the time. You need to be here for me, and I really feel like God has done this so that you are able to be here.
But I was more concerned but I need to be there for you later too, financially. And so
we made it to 36 weeks, and I can remember one of our doctors, his bedside manner is awful.
Yeah.
Awful. He would literally walk into the room and say, "Still pregnant? Okay," and walk out. And that was it. And I was like, thanks, Dr. Helm.
Yeah.
Dr. Helm.
Yeah. And so, but one day he came in and he was just like, you know what? When I think of doctors, they've got science, they've got all of these things to back them up. Not that doctors don't believe in God, but they've got an explanation for everything. They need to have an explanation for everything. That's their job. And so one day he came in and he was reading my chart and he was like, you've been in here this long and nothing has happened. I don't even know that you needed to be in here because we would have seen something already. You've been here because the thing was they said we would be lucky to make it to 30 weeks. That was the whole thing. If you can make it just to 30 weeks, then you'll be good. And then it was, if you can just make it to 32 weeks, we can, and you should hold out for 34, And so as the weeks went on, they were just like, if we can just get you to 34, if we can just, and so a lot of that for me was like, if you could just deliver these babies already, because you just told me all I had to do was make it to 30. I'm at 36,
And so for them, they were waiting for the ball to drop, right?
The longer they're in, the better. That's the thing, because what they didn't want to happen is for us to do NICU time. So the newborn ICU, because with the condition that we have, a lot of times there's a deficit because of the blood that is lost. Their concern was for Olivia, maybe she wouldn't be developed as much as Sophia. There would be a little bit of, NICU time needed to do just to make sure that she was functioning and stuff. And so they would always tell me, I know this is awful. I know you don't want to be here, but it's the best thing you can do for your babies is to stay. And so I remember at about 36 weeks, doctor coming in and saying, I just don't even know that there's anything wrong. Are you sure that there were tangles with your cords? And we're like, yeah, it looked like a ball of yarn.
Yeah.
And so the thing was, I wasn't allowed to go into labor. As soon as I started having contractions, they were going to pull the plug because labor would be too much stress on the babies, and they were going to say, okay, enough is enough.
We want it to be our terms, not the baby's terms.
Sure.
And so at about 36 weeks and 2 days, I started having contractions, really small ones, but contractions, just a few here and there. And the doctors were like, okay, it's time. And I was like, wait, what? Now, mind you, it's been 70 days, but all of a sudden I'm like, no, because I don't know what I thought was going to happen. Like they were going to come out through osmosis or something but I realized they're about to do a Houdini on my abdomen and get these babies out, saw me in half and put me back together. And
they couldn't give you an hour to figure it out.
Yeah. And that thought had not occurred to me. So I was like,
mind you, this is also the same woman who's like, just get them out already. Every week along the way. And then
finally they're like, okay, it's time. And I'm like, no,
no,
it's not time.
And she even told me afterwards, she's like, baby, I feel like we made a mistake. We should have fought to keep them in longer. I'm like, no.
It's a go time.
Yeah, it is. So it was the craziest thing because we delivered. And the delivering doctor was like, Dad, you need to see this. Yeah. And it's funny because we got video of it just briefly. And I really do feel like it's because it was something that God wanted for just us. But he had the video camera there. He couldn't film any of the actual birth because they don't want you to look at like film the actual surgical procedure. But we've got video of the girls, crying, coming out and crying and stuff. And then the doctor says, Dad, you need to see this. And you see just a brief snap and then the video goes blank.
Do you have that with you?
I do. Karen has it on her Facebook.
No, that I don't.
I do have it somewhere, I think. I have to find it.
Well, if you find it, implement it.
So the doctor says, Dad, you got to see this. And he looks. What does it look like, babe?
Oh, my gosh. It was literally a ball, right? And so essentially what the doctor had told us is that the girls, when they did the initial cut to take them out, they went to grab one baby, but they were both so close together, belly to belly, that they had to cut the umbilical cord of one to remove and then cut the umbilical cord of the other to remove. Now, normally what they do is they will take the umbilical cords, they'll take a portion of the blood, they'll extract it, and they use that for like stem cell stuff so that if a baby is sick or whatever, they have that. They'll send it to a place. They couldn't do that because as soon as they cut the second one, they went and unwound because there were 7 knots
Wow.
In the umbilical cords, and they were braided together. So when it came out, it was this big ball like this.
Holy mackerel.
Dad says that's a whole lot of baby.
Oh my word.
Look at this. Look at that.
Can I pull, can I?
Yeah, look at that. They're not for us. No, they're entangled.
Wow, babe, it is in like a triple knot.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah. Yeah, save that. I want a picture. Wow. How amazing. Absolutely amazing. Praise God.
They're so tightly stuck together that they're like 2 minutes apart, whereas twins are usually like 10, 15 minutes apart because they remove one, clean them up, and then go to remove the other.
Yeah, no,
but
they removed
they
them.
were
Yeah, they were about a minute apart.
They were so tight, like basically tangled together that they couldn't. And so the doctors told us, they were like, there is no medical explanation for how you made it to 36 weeks.
Without a heart deceleration. And that's when Karen and I, afterwards, we're in the recovery room and we're thinking about it. I mean, and we just got tears in our face because we're thinking like, we relied on ourselves and that didn't work. We relied on the doctors and that didn't work. We had no choice but to rely on God. God made sure that he got the credit for the birth of these babies.
Yeah.
Because there was no other explanation for them.
Even to the point where, even the doctors were like, we have no explanation for it. You should not, these babies should not be here. Is like, and they were all like telling us that they were like, there's no reason why you guys should have made it as long as you did.
The worst thing that we had to do, we brought Sophia home and we had to leave Olivia overnight for one night because she was having a hard time swallowing.
Yeah,
and then
so
later on,
we didn't do any
problems
NICU time, which was amazing. So we were able to bring the girls home. Like you said, they had a little bout of jaundice, but most babies do, so no big deal. But so it was, and that's when the real fun began. But what he was saying is that I never wanted kids. And then when I found out I was having twins, I was like, Lord, who do you think I am? Because,
and he goes, who do you think I am?
And I'm like, I don't even want kids. Why am I having two, Yeah. And what happened was within that first year, I realized that if I had had only one child, I would have been a very absent parent because he's such a good dad. All he's ever wanted to do is be a dad. He changes diapers. He's, he is so there. And I would have been like, you got this. You got this. And I would have not had that attachment. But because there was two, I felt like he needed my help. I couldn't be absent. I couldn't be, and looking back at it, even within the first year, I was like, God knew me better than I knew myself to know. Had I just given you one baby, you would not have.
And it's such a role reversal.
Made
typically
that connection.
it's the other way around.
Sure.
And, according to even her testimony, her biggest fear was being a single mom.
Yeah.
And the reality is that she would have made me essentially a single dad.
Yeah.
And so, God just knew. He knew that there needed to be two. And they're such a blessing. They drive me up the flipping wall. But I love my kids.
That's part of
so
that
much.
entanglement, right?
Yeah. but yeah, and having twins, people are like, oh, it must be so hard. I'm like, we have nothing to compare it to.
So if you have twins and they're the only kids you have, you don't know any.
And that's why,
different.
like with Hazel, it's been a real blessing because we're like, this is nothing compared to having the girls.
Can I ask you though, because you said something earlier, probably even before the break, that the doctor said that you might even lose your own life. Now, when he said that, what was going through your mind?
With that, it was difficult because what was bigger on that was the idea of an abortion. And so because I was a believer, it was like, oh my gosh, that's the big bad, like you're not supposed to do that.
Especially
God has a plan.
Because the plan that basically is that the girls would still be viable. But if she got an infection, it would almost be against her will. They would have to abort those babies to save her life.
They basically said, we will choose you over the fetuses, not babies. In that situation, they say fetuses.
So you wouldn't have a choice.
I wouldn't. No, they'd say, we would need to choose your life over theirs. And I was just like, what if I don't want to? They're like, you don't have a choice. Like they're not to the point of where we could safely deliver them. You know, it would be more humane basically to just in their life as opposed to trying to make them go through it. So it was never, that was more of what was a hang up for me, was the idea of like me having an abortion, even though it would be a medical advised abortion. Like I wouldn't have had a choice, but I still would have had to live with that idea. So, I mean, obviously everyone who says, I would give my life for my children. It's like, well, you know, I would love to think that, you know, but at the time it's like, you know, for him, he had even said, he was like, no, we're saving your life. He's like, we can have more kids. I only have one of you. Like we can have other kids. The doctors have already told you these are the risks. This is but I couldn't come to terms with like, I can't just, we've made it this far. How can we just give up on these, you know? And that was really like what it was that I literally had no choice. There was no choice in any of it because it was like, God's going to do what he's going to do. And, you know, and if it was that God caused me, you know, or allowed me to get an infection and have the babies aborted, it was going to be for his glory. It was going to be for his will. And so it was a lot to like really just kind of,
well, you know, and we even have, you know, a testimony with later on with Hazel, because Karen, you know, after the girls were born, Karen got back to, you know, being on the shot and doing all of those things. And we decided we want to have another one. Right. And we tried and tried and tried, and we had 2 miscarriages. One of them required her to actually have a DNC, which is essentially an abortion, right? But the baby was already deceased.
I see.
And it broke my heart because I see this little. 2 weeks before, we saw this little heart, this little baby shaped thing with the little heart, 6 weeks old, right? 2 weeks later, we go in and check. Still there, but where the heart was is a black hole. Oh my gosh. Even now it just makes me like, ugh, it hurts so bad. A lot. But Karen experienced that, had to go through the pain and the suffering of that situation. And then a few weeks later, about a month or so later, she had a friend who had a miscarriage.
And you had to be there for her.
That's right. Hey, do you know who that person is?
Your wife.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
yeah. But yeah, there's just so many ways that God works, and so many things that happen in our lives that you don't really even think could be a testimony because it's more of just a trial.
Yeah.
At the time, you know, and so.
Well, and I even think back to, you know, I bring that up because about your life. Because earlier in your testimony, you wanted to end your life. Yeah. See? And so even in that, God was with you and God had protected you into where the doctor said it could be your life too. And you were willing to give up your life for your children. You know, I just,
well, you know,
all that is fascinating.
It is. But again, and that just proves on how personal of a relationship God has with us. People believe that God is this, you know, ambivalent, am I saying that right? Whatever it is. A God who is there but is not really a part of our lives. He's just there and says, figure it out. You know?
Yeah. No, he loves every moment of us.
He has the power to be intimately involved in every single one of our lives.
And just think, we probably drive him up the wall, right?
Oh, of course. Of course. So, I mean, how many times are we doing things and he's just like Bob.
Yeah.
Bob, how many times?
But you know I love you.
Yeah. But yeah, to come full circle, like that is really where I've been saved since I was 12, had a relationship with God since I was 12, but it took being 29 to
29 and pregnant.
29 barefoot and pregnant is really when my relationship with Christ began.
Yeah. Well, you know, and let's backtrack a little bit because, you know, we talked about how we went to her mom's church and we only went a couple of times. Right, a couple times a month. Maybe in a year's time we went 8 times total.
Yeah,
right?
10, 12 times a month.
We had, in the time that we were in the hospital, we had every week somebody from that church either called us or visited us. And we weren't members. We weren't tied to them in any real way except for through Martha, her mother. And these people prayed for us, and they spent time with us, and they made sure that we were okay. Yeah. And we didn't know them. I mean, we knew them on an acquaintance level, but not personally.
Yeah.
And to me, that is, going back to what we've talked about in the past and how some people believe that church is not an important thing, or that church is just filled with people who are there to judge you and whatever. At least for our church is a praying church.
Yeah.
And, prayer is powerful. And when you have a group of people who have that intimate personal relationship with God because they talk to Him every day, things happen.
Yeah.
Things happen. Things are put into place. God acknowledges that relationship, and and amazing things happen because of it. And we attribute a lot of our maintained faith and care at that hospital to the prayer warriors that were there.
Yeah.
I mean, they told us on how there was a situation where they literally had a group meeting of prayer warriors specifically for us. I mean, we don't know them, and here they are doing this.
That's awesome.
It's just a beautiful thing, And then you fast forward now, and we're very involved with the church, and but again, it's because God just knows.
Yeah.
And we have to remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I mean, that's really when God got a hold of my life. And don't get me wrong, like there are times when I mess up big time, but I think the one thing that is bigger than all of that, what's different than before, is that I have that open line of communication with God, whereas before it was just kind of like, okay, thank you, Jesus, for this food, amen, type of thing, where it's like, but now it's that intimate relationship of, feeling like you're disappointing God, not necessarily just being like, he'll deal with it, that flippancy. But so that is definitely when God got a hold of my life and said, I'm here. I want to be a part of your life, and I have a plan for you. And that is, we could not repay his kindness, but we were trying really hard by, saying, okay, Lord, like you've gotten us through this and we are yours now. And so I think that's, from that point on, God just really started moving, and he was working in our life because we were letting him, like we were acknowledging him.
Well, we said the simple things of, okay, Lord.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but okay, Lord.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to put reason. God doesn't need reason.
Yeah.
God does not work with reason. God works with miracles, and miracles put reason to the wayside and say, no, you think you know, but you don't know. Let me show you what
you
I
finally
can do.
did, though. I think is obey.
Yeah.
He said, "Oh, okay." Mm-hmm. You gave it to him.
Trust and obey.
Yeah.
Because there is no other
other way. Yeah, it's more than a cliche. Let's rhyme today.
All right.
But I mean, that's what an amazing testimony. It really is. Mm-hmm. It's God's greatness.
And that's the thing. That's why that's why it's so important for us to share our testimony.
Life is ugly, guys. I mean, come on. Life stinks sometimes, but God is with us. That's where He won't ever leave us or forsake us.
Well, I'm reminded of Joseph and the words that Joseph says to his brothers when he first sees them after, they sold him into slavery and all these things have happened over years and years and years, and he finally sees his brothers again, and he has the ability to literally say off with their heads, like, how you like me now type of thing. And, and he cannot put up the charade anymore. He just cries. He just comes, and says, I'm Joseph, and whatever. And they're shocked and appalled, and like, they don't know what to do. And then he says, basically says, don't worry. You meant it for bad, but God meant it for good. God had a plan. And it seemed like it was, you guys are so remorseful over this, but God used that.
Yeah.
God used that. And that
to save his people.
Yeah. For so many things, that's the verse that always comes to mind is like, it was meant for bad, but God meant it for God. God used it. And there's so many things that'll happen in your life that you oftentimes can't see what good could possibly come out of this. When I was losing a child, and just sitting there pouring my heart out and crying to one of my very best friends eating gelato, and she's sitting there and she's just there, just, holding my hand and stuff. Who knew that 3 months later I would be doing the same thing for her, because it was meant for bad, but God meant it for good. God, it gave me that ability to minister to her in that way. So, and it's just, there's so many things. God is just so awesome. And just, he knows us way better than we could ever know ourselves. And that's because he made us, and so it's like, don't forget that. That, even though he seems like he's so far away, sometimes he's right there.
Well, he only seems far away because we're looking in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of it. Because if we reach out our hand to him, he's there to pick us up.
It reminds me of in The Little Mermaid when Scuttle has the telescope, the telescope where he's looking through the wrong side and it looks like she's way, way far out, and he flips it over and she's right there. So, Little Mermaid, watch it. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
And I remember going to San Francisco visiting you guys, and at the time, and this was hearing all this again. It's just like I didn't realize how much serious it was. Like even at the time visiting you guys, and you just looking at your faces, you're like, "Get us out of here!" But but
a lot.
Yeah, but you were so happy to see somebody, and so yeah, it was just. It was a long time ago, and I think we forget. I forgot. I mean, how bad it was.
Yeah, you really do. You just but when you're in it, it's all you can see, and you feel like it's taking forever, and you feel like, when is this going to end? Yet here we are, and it just seems like a blurb.
Well, I remember Karen telling me, "I'm never getting pregnant again."
That's why when you said you wanted to have a third child, I was like, "Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Never again."
I blame your wife for that. Though.
No, I can't blame you for doing that.
No, blame the girl at Starbucks. That's what it
right.
is. Yeah,
yes.
That's what happened. I took the girls. The girls were 4, I think 3 or 4, and I had them in the double stroller. And I had walked to Starbucks, and we were getting a drink, and there was this woman with the itty bitty baby, and she was taking it out of the carrier, and the girls were like, "Oh, mommy, look, baby, mommy," and that was when I was like,
"Oh boy,
oh, they need a baby." Lord knows they should have just gotten a puppy, but but that's when I was like, "Oh, they need a baby," But,
I didn't hear that story.
No, you never heard that. I've told that story to a few people.
You hear some good things out of it. Huh?
That's funny.
Well, thank you, Karen, for sharing that.
Well, and we were originally going to do some news, but I think we're good with just the testimony. I think that was powerful.
Sorry,
no, it was great. Don't be sorry.
I don't want to.
See, and I'm a woman where it's like I don't know how to do the short story of anything.
Okay.
There has to be details.
I have explained this to her. I asked her, "Hey, honey, how's your day?" And it is literally play for play, minute by minute comparison,
If
the
you
same
don't wanna
amount
know,
of time.
Don't ask.
She has a 9-hour shift. I hear 9 hours of a story. She asked me, "How's my day?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's pretty good."
That's that. Yeah.
I'm the
But
same.
that's the difference between a man and a woman, right?
Well, I don't know. I feel like that there's value in the details.
There is value in the details.
I do have
I
to
also
put
don't
effort
remember.
into explaining
Some
more than
things,
say it was good.
I mean, I do too. If it's a good story, if a good situation, if there's a reason why I shaved my beard off after spending a day at work, then I'll explain that story. But typically, it's just if it's the same thing, if it's the same situation, just a different day, I don't feel like it's
I would say this show has helped me explain more of my day. Because you have to explain stuff on the show. So I used to be just listening.
It's not good for radio when you say, "That's good."
Yeah.
That's good.
So how's everybody doing out there?
Wonderful.
All right. Well, let's get out with the word of prayer. Tim, you want to throw us out?
Sure. Wow. Heavenly Father, we just thank you that you're You never leave us or forsake us, no matter how crazy we get, no matter how far away we think we are from you. You're still right there, and you haven't left us, even though we may, in our minds, left you. And we thank you for that. That when we put our faith in Jesus Christ, you don't let go. It's like we are your children, and when you adopt us, you don't unadopt us. You don't divorce us. You don't do anything like that. You keep us, and we thank you for that. So no matter what we go through in life, you are there with us. We pray for those who may not know you as a personal Savior, but Lord, I pray right now for them to understand that they need Jesus Christ in their life. This is the best ever decision they could make in their life. So I pray for them, that those who are listening that don't know who Jesus is. Well, who is this Jesus? And the testimony that the experience, the life experience you have given this awesome couple. There's a testimony to Jesus Christ, how he doesn't leave us. So I pray right now that they heard this story and they understand that this is true. And this is the life. This is their life. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't easy. It was everything difficult, but you were there with them. And we thank you for that precious Jesus. We just thank you for this time together. We thank you for just a tremendous testimony and getting them through it. In your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Well, folks, we're going to take yet another break. We're done with the video, but when we come back, I have about a half hour of Jack and of his testimony of this week.
All right.
So this will be fun.
Good.
So,
all right. We'll be back right after this.
That's right.
Remember to like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Let's Get Jacked Up. Check out our website at letsgetjackedup.com. Listen and download our episodes from our website, the Spreaker app, and of course at fringeradionetwork.com.
You're listening to us on the Fringe Radio Network.